Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1188 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Megan and Kevin. Now, Kevin has type 1 diabetes. He's had it actually for 40 years, since he was 8 years old. And now, Kevin and Megan's daughter, Lily, who is 4, has type 1 as well. This episode is a terrific opportunity for you to hear a husband and wife team talk about type 1 diabetes from different perspectives. Please don't forget that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Hey, do you have type 1 diabetes, or are you the caregiver of someone who does? Are you a U.S. resident? If you are those things, please go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and complete the survey. That's all I need you to do, and you will have helped type 1 diabetes research. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. If you're looking for community around type 1 diabetes, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, type 1 diabetes. But everybody is welcome. Type 1, type 2, gestational, loved ones, it doesn't matter to me. If you're impacted by diabetes and you're looking for support, comfort, or community, check out Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. If you'd like to wear the same insulin pump that Arden does, all you have to do is go to omnipod.com/juicebox. That's it. Head over now and get started today, and you'll be wearing the same tubeless insulin pump that Arden has been wearing since she was 4 years old. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the only implantable sensor rated for long-term wear, up to 6 months, the Eversense CGM. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. An explicit version of this episode is available exclusively to Apple Podcast Premium subscribers.
Hi, I am Megan. I live in North Carolina, and I am the mother of a 4-year-old who has type 1 and the wife of an adult who has type 1.
I thought you were going to say of an adult who acts like he's 4 years old.
Well, I do feel like sometimes I have 4 children instead of 3, but I still love him. And that is kind of why we're here today.
To let us know that you still love Kevin?
Yeah.
That's good to hear. Good to know. That affirmation is always appreciated.
Kevin, you have type 1 diabetes for how long?
I've had it. So I just turned 48. I was diagnosed at 8 years old. So I'm 40 years strong now.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I've seen quite the evolution over, a long period of time in both, sort of how treatment is recommended and just the technology growth with this disease. It's been quite crazy to watch. Actually.
Massive. Yeah, massive change. Hey, can I ask a question? Just jumping right in for a second, Kevin. You have 2 kids. It sounds like, right?
3. We have 3. Yep.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I counted her when she was like 4. I don't know why I did that, Megan. Sorry.
No, I have 4 kids.
Yeah,
including Kevin.
Got it.
He was counting me as I'm the 4th.
So 3 children. One of them has type 1. He or she. I'm sorry. He. She.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Our youngest daughter. She's 4 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got 2 older children. It doesn't happen until your 3rd kid. How old was she when she was diagnosed?
2.
So this is 2 years ago. So Kevin, this is my point. You're 46 years old at that point.
Yeah.
38 years into having diabetes. Did you ever think your children would have type 1?
Well, it was always in the back of our mind because I know just in my line of work, I work in the research area, and I know how to read some medical literature, and so I think while the overall chance is still pretty low, I think if you have a parent that has type 1, I think the chances that your child is going to have it is still going to be statistically higher than if you didn't have it yourself. So it was always kind of in the back of our mind. Mm-hmm. I think what surprised us the most was that it was our youngest and not our middle child, our boy. We were kind of expecting, it's if it's going to happen, it'll be him. He's looks exactly like me. We're basically the same. I think it tends to be a little bit more common in boys. So we sort of always, if it was going to happen, we thought it would be him, and it could, still could be. Who knows? Don't want to jinx him, but we were just surprised that it was her. Yeah.
How did she present?
It was, kind of typical. We noticed that she was just thirsty and going to the bathroom a lot. And I think we did catch it very quickly because, we knew there was a problem when she was getting up in the middle of the night and asking for water. And, the first time she did that, we finger checked her immediately and, found out.
So Megan, do you have the same feeling about wondering if the kids would have diabetes? Like, you know what I mean?
Before this, probably not so much. I actually will say I really surprised about how little I knew about diabetes, even being married to somebody with it before all this. So no, I guess it was always sort of in the back of my mind a little bit. I do agree with Kevin. I thought for sure it happened to one of our older two, probably our middle son. I do remember asking all the time at the pediatrician, like, what do you think? My husband's a type 1. And she would say, I think you're okay. We see it in families, but usually I don't see it so much in father-daughter, father-son. I'll see it in uncle-cousin sort of situation. So I don't know that I was incredibly worried about it. I probably wouldn't have married Kevin if I was that worried. No, just kidding.
Gee, thanks.
But Kevin, I'm actually interested in that. So it's too late now. You guys are you're in your late 40s, but you've been married for 20 years.
I'm 10 years younger.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah,
hold on a second.
I got lucky.
Hold on. I didn't know Megan was a trophy. Megan, congratulations. First of all, Kevin, congratulations to you. This is lovely. Did you trick her or get her with money and goods? How did this go?
Yeah, I think it came down to, like she's saying, she just wasn't that aware of it. And the other thing, Scott, too, is for me, just as background on myself, maybe there's some favorable genetics or whatever, but just over the course of the years, I've had a pretty easy time with diabetes. My A1Cs have always been great, and it has never really afflicted me, at least not yet. And so, when she meets someone like me, there's nothing really outwardly that's different or that's, that overwhelming in terms of how I, handle it on a day-to-day basis, and, she took my word that it was, that I've got everything under control. It just wasn't a big deal in our conversation.
I lied to my wife a lot too when I was dating. I told her,
right.
Yeah. I was like,
I will say the whole, I don't know, Kevin, I don't know, Scott, you talk a lot sometimes about, the psychology of things and perspective and things like that. And, it's interesting because I think Kevin is definitely a glass half full type of person. And I am definitely not. I am the half empty. So he always really didn't really dwell on diabetes or it's holding me back or so I never really thought much of it. I kind of just thought, as a handle, it doesn't seem like such a big deal because his perspective has always been really positive, which is great. Mine isn't positive at all. It's taken me 2 years with our daughter having it to finally be like, okay, I guess this is fine.
Yeah. Well, listen, first of all, that dynamic keeps the world moving because that little bit of anxiety that you feel as a mom, that's what keeps everything going.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm positive that I would still be in my mom's house if it wasn't for Kelly. I'd be like, this is fine. Kelly's the one who's like, no, we need to do more. We have to go do this now. And I'm like, oh, okay, if you say so, and guys, I think, is obviously an incredible generalization, but that idea of we'll just run forward and make something happen. It'll be okay.
Right.
I think, I also think part of the outlook, the positive outlook on it, it also comes partly from just being diagnosed as a child. At 8 years old, it's, you don't really, you don't have kind of worldly concerns, and at that time social media did not exist, and it was, and I had a mother who was very task oriented, and once we got the system down, that was it. And it was just it was a part of daily life,
right,
and a part of your tasks each day. And I think while having a 2-year-old diagnosed for us, that definitely sucked. For her, I think the blessing is that it's always going to be, she's never going to remember not having it. It's always going to be kind of part of her daily life. And I think that's going to help her later. I think will have less tendency for that that rebellion against diabetes, because I never had that. I never
You're actually incredibly fortunate. You probably don't see it this way, but if you were diagnosed 40 years ago, management was nothingness. You probably did an injection once or twice a day, right?
Yeah, the mental load at that, just the load in general at that time was nothing. It worked more like, just taking a prescription. You take a pill a couple times a day, and you checked your blood sugar like 3 times a day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you took your shot twice a day, basically, and you just stuck to the script.
Right.
Somehow, I always managed really good A1Cs, but I have no idea what my blood sugar was doing in between.
So many people in my private Facebook group talk about their love for Omnipod 5. Have you seen those posts and thought, I wish I could have that experience with an insulin pump? Well, if you've answered yes to that question, you might be experiencing FOMO, fear of missing out on Omnipod. Symptoms of FOMO may include, but are not limited to, wishing you could wear outfits without pockets, fantasizing about jumping into a swimming pool without disconnecting from your insulin pump first, and dreaming about walking past a doorknob without getting your tubing caught. Good news, you do not have to suffer from FOMO any longer. You can see what you're missing just by trying Omnipod 5 for yourself. Visit omnipod.com/juicebox to get started today. Yeah, this is why I call you fortunate, because back then the measure of success was alive and not passed out. You're doing it right.
Right.
Yeah. And that's not necessarily true. There are plenty of people who were diagnosed 40 years ago that aren't even with us anymore because that didn't work for them. So you are in that, who knows what it is? Maybe it's your mom's diligence. Maybe you got lucky with a doctor who guessed right about your insulin dosing and kept up with changing it as you got older. Who knows, right?
I will say too, I think, as I moved later, once I got into my 20s and, really just, had to, kind of take more ownership of it and control it myself, I started finding myself, a little bit at odds with the doctors that I had, because I think even to this day, kind of the treatment approaches are still too conservative. And, for many years, even before CGMs came out, I was essentially trying to do what the CGMs do now. I found I switched over to just being followed by my PCP at that time, who knew diabetes, and he would prescribe for me 400 test strips a month, and I would check my blood sugar 15 times a day, and that's how I just manually kind of knew what my trends were all the time, and I think that helped a lot. And I was aggressive with my insulin, and I think that period of time is, I think, really what helped me.
It's all fortunate. It's all very for that your personality works that way and everything else. Now, Megan, I have a question. After your daughter gets type 1, how far into it, when you start really understanding what's happening to her and how her body's reacting and what all the variables are, how long until you take a quiet step back and think, oh my God, is this Kevin's life? I had no idea.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I don't know. I did definitely think that at some point when I don't know, because I feel like I was so far up my own. I mean, I had a hard time when she was diagnosed with it.
Yeah.
I actually don't think it was till a while after where I started to think gee whiz,
I should be nice with this guy.
Why didn't you, convey this to me? This is pretty rough. And I'll speak to Kevin's mom and say oh my God, how did you do this? And to Kevin's point, I think back in the day, it might've been easier just because they didn't have the technology they have now. But yeah, I mean, I definitely have had those moments where, it's crazy how just being the mother as opposed to, the spouse,
Right.
for me has been way more eye-opening, yeah.
Can I ask Kevin, has Megan ever voiced that to you, or is that the first time you're hearing that?
We've talked about that for sure. And Megan has had those conversations with my mom, which I think, even though it was totally different when my mom, was first.
Your mom's probably like, why are you trying so hard? Just give him one shot.
Yeah. But that, having my mom to go to, I think helped her with that as well. And again, it's like, I've been very fortunate and lucky and well controlled. And so I don't know, for me, I appear more normal probably to Megan than our daughter Lily does. So
when you say normal, do you mean less intensive, like concerns and cares? Because
yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
What's your management style, Kevin? What do you do?
So, right now, I have I don't really use any set formulas. I kind of, I am still on the original Omnipod.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I've not even moved to the Dash yet, which I'm kind of.
Well, you will be soon.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I don't worry. I've got like a 6-month stock.
I think December, original. If I'm not mistaken, I think December is the date they're going to stop making them. So
yeah. But it's, I think it really follows, much of what you talk about on your podcast, just being really diligent about pre-bolusing for meals.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of that for me is not overdoing things on the carbohydrate side. In particular, I think the last 6 months or so, I've kind of moved to a lower carb diet.
Right.
And I made my last A1C, I got it a week ago.
This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the only CGM you can take off to get into the shower, the Eversense CGM. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. Well, I mean, sure, you could take the other ones off, but then you'd waste a sensor and have to start over again. But not with Eversense. Eversense is a 6-month wear implantable CGM. So if you want to take a shower without anything hanging on you, pop off the transmitter, jump in the shower. When you get back out, put it back on, and you're right back to where you started. Come to think of it, you could do that whenever you wanted to. Maybe it was your prom night or your wedding day. Maybe you just don't want the thing on for a little while, but you don't want to go all through the hassle of taking it off and having to restart it and, starting back over with like wonky numbers and having to, all that goes with it when you take off a CGM and put it back on. Oh, but you don't have to do that with the Eversense CGM. Because Eversense is the only long-term CGM with 6 months of real-time glucose readings. This gives you more confidence, more convenience, and flexibility. The Eversense CGM is there for you when you want discretion, a break, or maybe just a little adult time. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. Pop that transmitter off, pop it back on, you're right back where you started, without any wasted devices or time.
Was 6.2, which is pretty good for, I'd like it a little bit lower. But I've managed that while reducing my insulin intake by quite a lot, just, by having a bit lower carb diet.
Course,
so, it's always a mental game, as a diabetic, you don't overreacting in either direction. If you're on a low or a high, that will put you on the roller coaster, and that's you don't want to be on that. It's keeping an even keel is the key for me.
Yeah, it can eat up your whole day, actually.
Yep, it can. Yeah.
All right, so you're using Omnipod. Do you have a CGM by any chance?
Yeah. I'm on the G6.
Okay.
I have had no problems with the G6.
We never did either.
Yeah. We just put our daughter on the Libre, which I think is a better device for various reasons, and I may switch to that at some point.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you should use whatever works for you. Yeah, Arden's using G7. It's been fantastic, and actually, I'm going to put a G7 on this week. I'm going to try to get my numbers and put them online for people. So
awesome.
They seem
That'll be interesting.
It seems to be, I'll tell you why, it seems to be really helpful for people to see a person who doesn't have diabetes and watch their blood sugar ebb and flow. I think it alleviates a lot of your, the worry of, when you see 140 after a meal, you're like, oh my God, it's over. You're like, actually, I think everybody's blood sugar does that.
Yeah.
You just don't want to be in a situation where, it keeps going up or doesn't come back down and, in a reasonable amount of time, etc. Anyway. Okay. So what about your daughter? What is she managing with?
So Lily's on an Omnipod. Lily's been quite an adventure for us. We got her on the Omnipod, the original one. We got her switched. This is why we're on your podcast, because you put a post up in the Facebook group asking if anyone had gotten their little ones, I think, on an Omnipod 5, and would you be interested in coming on the show?
Excellent.
And I think I responded, and you didn't have immediate openings, so you sent the link for, I don't know, this was probably a year ago.
Yo, I got to tell you, I just put that link up again for people, and we're talking in August 2023 right now. I already see stuff on my calendar we're talking in October 2023. I'm already seeing stuff on my calendar for August of 2024. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But yeah. Okay. Oh, great. Let's talk about that then. Your setup here is too interesting not to talk about for a little longer. Also, if one of you can say, "Oh, Lily," at some point, I would love to make that the title as a Munsters reference. But that's a long way to go. If one of you could work that out for me the next half an hour or so.
Okay, I'll work on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just go, "Oh, Lily," and then I'll be all set.
That's fine.
It's a pretty name.
We have a lot of practice saying that. So yeah,
I bet you do.
Yeah,
with a few bad words thrown in there too. But
no, I actually, Megan, you're interesting because you have that North Carolina thing in your voice, but you came so close to saying I was so up my ass when Lily was diagnosed, and I was like, oh, she wants to curse. I hope she does.
I do. I am from Long Island, so I have it in me.
Then. All right, let's go.
It's hard for me to hold back. Kevin gets annoyed with me because I do have a potty mouth, and so does our 4-year-old because of it. So.
That's excellent. I love Lily now. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So I just want to dig a little farther into all of this because Megan's obviously, I mean, you're describing yourself as kind of like shell-shocked, when Lily's diagnosed. Yep. And I'm assuming her care goes to you, or does it go to the both of you?
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, come on. Let's be honest.
What's he going to do? He's going to swagger carbs and throw some insulin at her and be like, I don't know, that should work.
It is interesting. Even though I am the diabetic and have had all these years of experience, 100%. Yeah, Megan deals with Lily much more than I do, and she's done an awesome job.
I go out with friends, and Kevin's texting me like, "What would you bolus her for this? Hey, she's got this IOB. She's going up. What should I give her?" And I'm like, "Figure it out."
Yeah, I think one thing there.
40 years.
Yeah, come on, man.
I think there's a good point there, though. It's like it is very different. The treatment course between like a toddler and an adult that's had it for years. Like they don't translate all that well in some cases, because Lily's got growth hormones going on, and it's so different.
Either the child aspect to the adult aspect, or one day, by the way, female hormones, and you not having ever dealt with that. But moreover, what you're describing is the problem that we see in healthcare for people with diabetes, because have you ever heard that, when people are talking about big monumental problems, they'll say, well, the last thing that could help this is if a generation dies off, if the old ideas go away. Mm-hmm. And I think that you still just see a blend of this in the world. Like there's, nobody at this point should be telling you, if you get low, you should take 15 carbs and wait for 15 minutes. But yet that's a thing that's said every day to people in doctors' offices, right? Yeah. And, all of this stuff that's left over, remnants of the past impacting now. And Kevin's, in his mind's doing great, right? Like even earlier, he said, I've always had really good A1Cs. And Kevin, I want to say this. I don't think a 6.2 is not a really good A1C. But if you tell me you've had diabetes for 40 years, you're low carb, and your A1C is not in the 5s, I think, he doesn't completely get it. Mm-hmm. And again, nothing wrong with a 6.2. It's absolutely amazing. You should be lauded for it. But you know what I mean, though, right?
Yeah. Well, to your point, Scott, I can give you a great example of what you're talking about. I've had in the last year. I've had A1Cs in the high 5s. Last year, I had an appointment with my endo I was going in with a 5.9. That was my reading.
All right.
And I'm telling you this, you're kind of like a kid that you want to come home and show your mom and dad your great report card, right? Every time I have A1Cs like that and go in to my appointments, it ends up being a struggle session going through the graphs and the lines, nitpicking and picking apart the lows and how do we address the lows. And from my point of view, I'm willing to accept, a little bit of risk in having some lows mixed in.
Yep.
If overall that's going to mean I'm on average lower and I can achieve those types of A1Cs. And I think in healthcare, the sort of your standard endocrinologist doesn't really get that still. So.
No, it's funny, isn't it? A person, now you have a child with, by the way, what's Lily's A1C?
Her last one, it's usually around 6.2, but her last one, which we want to dive into with you, was 7 because of her CGM issues, which we can explain.
Okay, let's talk about. I was just going to say though that Kevin, you're in the doctor's office with a 6.2, had been a 5.9, very stable, right? You've had diabetes for 40 years. Your kid has diabetes, and still someone sits down to you and goes, "On August 15th at 3 a.m., what happened there?"
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's all about avoiding lows. And I think, the care that is prescribed even to this day is still geared more toward that. I don't know if it's, just a safety and
I think it's liability, Kevin.
Liability. They want to avoid liability.
Yeah.
And I would also love to see more diabetics go into endocrinology as well. I don't think I've ever had an endocrinologist that has actually had diabetes.
It's a huge help. Yeah, it is a huge help. I actually have been booking doctors who have type 1 but are in other parts of medical care for a series I want to do like next year.
Oh.
Yeah, where I want to have doctors that are in like all different practices come on it and talk about what it's like to watch healthcare from their perspective.
Yeah,
because
that would be great.
Yeah, I think you're just right. So, there's that last aspect of it that if you don't have it or you haven't managed it like day to day, I don't know how you're supposed to know the rest of it,
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost unreasonable that you could. But okay, so let's get to why you're here. She's on Omnipod 5, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Right.
So she started on the regular or the original, and then we got her quickly switched to the Omnipod 5. Our endo was great and, wrote it off label for us pretty quickly when it came out.
Nice.
Got her on it. And at that point, she was on the G6.
Yep.
And I would say, had a tough time at first with the 5 in that I think we thought falsely that, hey, this is going to solve everything for us.
Yeah.
It was a little bit different than what we thought, but we got the hang of it and quickly realized that we had to fight the highs a little bit more than we thought, or than we'd like. We felt like she got high a lot on it and started to just be a little bit more aggressive with our boluses. She was on that, I'm going to say about June of 2022.
Yep.
She was on it.
Well, you did get it.
We're doing great.
Yeah, right away. I think it was August. But wasn't it August it came out, or you guys got it like day one?
We got it it was really quickly.
Wow.
I mean,
it was very early.
Okay.
It was very early.
Yeah.
For her age, I think even it wasn't even approved yet, but we had gotten it for her. And we're working on it and we get her on it and, everything's great. I think the most significant change we saw was at night. Way less wake ups for us and her. There was it prevented lows really well. We were sleeping better. So we're doing good on it. It was great because she goes to a part-time preschool where they don't have a nurse. And so it was really great to have, that pod just stop the insulin when she was going low. And in about June of this past year, so June 23, her Dexcom stops becoming reliable for us. So her Dexcom, her G6, pretty much immediately after diagnosis, so maybe September, October of 21, we get her on the G6. It's working beautifully for us. I mean, of course, hiccups here and there. Suddenly in June, I don't know what happened, but we started noticing a lot of either sensor errors or major discrepancies in her CGM reading from what a finger stick would say. I mean, I'm talking.
It was reporting her lower than the finger stick.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, way lower.
Right.
Way lower.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And those lines were just, Scott, some of her lines on the app, I mean, it looked like a shotgun blast. There was no, in some cases, just no discernible line at all. It was so strange. So strange.
So strange.
So my first thought is hydration.
Yeah. Pumping her.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We tried it all.
Yeah. No kidding. And so did it ever like come back together? Because, it's funny. We talk about this all the time, but never really dig into it very much. People in general, they make this one static physical item, and then we plug it into countless. I don't know how many customers CGMs, are too. They're not all going to work the same with everybody's body chemistry. And when you see things like hydration, that kind of stuff, all impacting it, site placement, etc. I think it's fascinating that we don't see more people who are just like, this doesn't work for me. You know what I mean? Like but I've seen it be wonky for people and then work again. And you never really know what changed in the physiology that led to that. I've also seen people just say, look, this doesn't work for me. And, and have to move on. What did you end up having happen?
Yeah. So, I mean, extremely frustrated because we really, I mean, this started in June and we went all summer just trying and trying. We just kept getting them replaced, getting new ones, trying different batches, trying different sites, hydration, no swimming. I'm like, maybe it's the swimming. We really stuck with it and it just did not come back. And it's the weirdest thing, right? Because it worked for us for a year. Like she had great. I mean, what suddenly changed over the course of 3 months, because again, we tried. I mean, we gave it 3 months of this.
And then we switched to the G7.
Dexcom G7. And that for us was really no better. I think, it was a little bit better with the readings, sure, but the major problem we had there was the connectivity. If she didn't have her phone on her body,
she doesn't carry the phone with
signal. So she's at school and I'm flipping out, texting her teachers, like, what's her blood sugar? So we probably only did about 4 G7 sensors. I mean, they were failing too, though. So
yeah, they all fit. We went.
Was this the very beginning of G7?
It was this past September.
Yeah, this is
more
recent.
recently. Okay.
Yeah. So Scott, we went probably, I guess from that June period through September. I don't think we once had either the G6 or G7. We did not have any go past 5 or 6 days, Megan?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm fascinated because, I mean, I obviously get to talk to a lot of people and a lot of people have access to me. And so when stuff first comes out, I'll tell you a secret. I don't care which sensor it is, Dexcom, Libre, whatever. When they first come out, I don't pay attention to them because there's fine tuning to be done. The companies never come right out and say it, but it doesn't make sense to me that they wouldn't need to see it on a lot of people before they could actually dial it in the rest of the way, if that makes sense. And I've seen that over and over again throughout the years with a lot of different devices. So the first couple months, if people are like, this thing's low or it's high, or I go, just wait a little while. But then for some people, it just never does. Arden has a friend who is couldn't use the sensor at all. They don't work for her. And I don't know why. Did you contact Dexcom and ask them?
Yeah, no one could help me there.
No one.
Yeah.
There's no help. I
called.
There.
I was a regular.
Eventually eventually they stopped denying our requests for replacements because we had called so much.
They tried to, and then I was like, you'll be sending me one.
This is where the Long Island comes in useful, Scott.
Oh, please. I told a story this morning to a person who didn't grow up near me. That must have sounded so Philly to them that they didn't. They were like, "That's very aggressive." I was like, "I didn't think so at all." And they were like, "It really is." I was like, "Oh, I didn't."
This is just normal. Kevin accuses me of speaking aggressively to him, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" That's
calm down, Kevin. You're fine.
Just my personality.
I had a European person tell me the other day, "You're so direct." And I swear to God, I know this probably sounds ridiculous to the people listening, but I thought, I am?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know that about myself.
I know. And then I stay up at night worrying about it. But yeah, I mean, I demanded a new transmitter. They sent us a new transmitter. I think what threw me and what threw Kevin is that it works for her. And I was like, surely you guys have seen this before. Like, what is wrong? Like, why was this working? And now it's not.
Success. Megan, did you ever try putting one on?
I haven't, and I would love to.
Do you still have them?
I do.
Put one on. Because you're confident that if you pulled one of those out of that drawer today, stuck it on her, it wouldn't work. So put it on you. If it works, then at least you can say to yourself, it's something between her physiology and that device.
Yeah.
It might give you some insight.
It is. Yeah, it has to be. Because like I said, I've had no problem. It works perfectly for
you.
Me. My lines are smooth as can be. Yeah. No issues.
Well, I started to say earlier, and I stopped myself. I don't know how I did that, but I did. I'm always kind of fascinated because people have access to me. I hear a lot of people's stories. Arden's worn, I can't even remember them all. Arden's worn a G4, a G7, a G7 Plus, a G6, and now a G7. By the way, there used to be 7 pluses before there were 7. I don't understand all that exactly. And now the current the G7 in its current form, I've never ever seen a problem. Never. It's always great for her. I'm not going to tell you that you don't put it on and for the first couple hours you're not like, what the hell? Like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. I'm not going to tell you that, I don't test her blood sugar or she doesn't test her blood sugar and it's not off by 10 points. But I was just telling somebody this morning, ironically, I'm watching someone wear one who doesn't have diabetes and they're like, my blood sugar always looks high. And then I test myself and I'm not. And I was like, yeah, it's only off by 10 points. And she goes, but my blood sugar is 90. It says it's 100. And I was like, yeah, when you have type 1 diabetes, I'm like, that kind of doesn't matter. Yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? Like it does a little, and maybe if you're really small, a little bit of insulin can make a big difference. But for the most part, once you're an adult, the insulin you get for a 100 or a 110 is like, it's all kind of the same, Yeah. You'll be able to see.
Yeah.
I mean, it's well worth the investigation just to find out. And then so a couple of questions, I guess. Kevin, how's your thyroid?
My thyroid is great according to my last labs. So I've never had an issue with my thyroid.
Well, what's your TSH? Do you know it when it?
I don't know it. If you give me a second, I can look those numbers.
I'll talk to Megan while you look. So I've seen thyroid numbers mess up CGM data sometimes. I don't know why. Trust me, that could be completely made up and colloquial at best. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
I also, Kevin's he's had diabetes a longer time. He's been with older endos. If he came back right now and said his TSH was 4, I would tell him he needs thyroid replacement hormone, and his doctor's going to tell him it's fine. And so, I wonder if, is that a thing we would check for Lily?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She had it checked, I think it was a year ago, and they, of course, told us it was fine. It's funny, before we were coming on to talk to you, I meant to check it because I don't remember what it was, but
it's that thing that once you have type 1 or an autoimmune issue, you learn to not just hear it's fine and go, great. You go, what does that mean? What's the number? What's the range? I want to know everything,
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think Kevin has, I have no idea, by the way, Kevin's thyroid might be 1.6 when he gets back.
So Scott, my TSH is, this was just last week, 1.04.
Yeah, he's amazing. Okay. You don't have a thyroid issue. So not that would mean she could or couldn't. I was just interested. Yeah, I don't know. Kevin, no celiac for you?
Nope.
No.
I've never had anything like that.
More autoimmune issues you don't have.
It's interesting you bring that up. In general, I do have allergies, and when I was, I don't know if it was linked at all in any way. But over the years, when I was a kid, I had basically unexplained hives, and they would come about a lot of times in the summer. This would happen when I was a kid, and it would happen, on a recurring basis, even into adulthood, especially in my 20s. You just get hives, and they would be sort of symmetrical on your body. So you get it on your wrists, they'd be on both wrists, or on your thighs, on the inside of your thighs, it'd be on both.
Interesting.
Or on your ankle, that sort of thing. So it was, and no one could ever really figure out what was causing it. But I sort of just concluded, I've got diabetes. I probably do have a bit of an overactive immune system.
Well, I buy into the people with, autoimmune stuff and even just hay fever and stuff like that. That's all just the immune response. Megan, by the way, he didn't bring that up on a date, did he?
Yeah, I think at that point I was maybe I was in remission from the hives.
Yeah. You guys were never at dinner, and he was like, "By the way, when I was in my 20s, I got hives on my thighs." That didn't come up at dinner, did it?
No, thankfully, because he would have been out. Goodbye.
I'm sorry, I don't know what that means, but you got to go.
You got to go. Yeah. I just pulled up Lily's. Her TSH was 1.7 and about a year ago.
Yeah, I mean that's really good. Yeah. So if it climbs over 2 and you see symptoms, do something. Just don't let them tell you it's in range. That's all.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
No celiac for her, nothing like that, gluten stuff. What CGM is she wearing right now? Libre.
So we got her the Libre 3. We started that.
Okay. Has that worked better for her?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Oh, great.
It has been great. Yeah. It's been night and day. It's been great. I'm so thankful. The only thing that sucks is the nighttime.
Well, because you can't use Omnipod 5 with it.
Correct.
Yep. So it's just every day. I mean, as you know, every day is different. So last night she's low. So I'm adjusting basal tonight to be, lower, but then she'll probably be high all night. So it's hard.
Can I say something crazy?
What?
Could she wear both?
Me?
No, her. Could she wear both? Like, could you use a Dexcom for the Omnipod?
That in the beginning.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sucks.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
We when she was still wearing the G7 or G6, we were like the information that the Omnipod was getting was just such garbage. We were like, does it even matter that she's on automated? Because I don't know how the automated mode could even work with what it was getting from her Dexcom.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm talking out of school to say that I think Omnipod will make Omnipod 5 work with Libre soon. I think that's a goal. Yeah.
I think I read it. I think they are. I think they said the 2 though, which is weird because
I think once they figure it out with 1 though, it should be able to move pretty quickly to the next one. It's not weird. When they start doing that with the FDA, the Libre 2 is probably what was available for them to work with.
True.
So they'll get that okay, and then it should not take a lot to get the next okay. Because I don't think there's probably a significant difference between 2 and 3 as far as the FDA is concerned.
Yeah, I think we're going to try it again, though. I think over Christmas, when she's home from school for several days, we'll try to put the G6 back on her, after giving it a rest for a few months. Maybe it was just something going on over the summer. I don't know. Mm-hmm. We'll try it again before.
Yeah. It's terrible. It's a lot to go through, especially the false lows for months is exhausting, because I'll tell you what happens is at first you're like, oh my God, she's low. You test her and she's like, she's not low. And you go, oh, okay. By the way, you calibrate after that happens?
Yeah. So we did.
When you can. Yeah.
When you can. Sometimes it didn't accept it because it was a 50-point discrepancy. So they wouldn't accept it. And
when
then
that happens, you just trick it. This is not medical advice at all. But if you have like a 50-point discrepancy and the CGM says 100, and let's just say the CGM says 150 and you're 100, just tell it 120 and then let it readjust and then tell it again and kind of walk it forward to it. But I know it's still a pain in the ass. But my point is that you see those lows, they're false. And then you think, I'm going to stop looking. That's not real. But for goddamn sure that the first time you don't look, it's going to be a real low, and then you're
right.
Yeah, and that sticks in your head all the time. No, I know.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
Terrible.
Well, I'm glad
Nobody tells you that.
Terrible. There's no way for him to tell you all this. How are they going to do all that?
Hospital? I know. No one told me this.
You'd still be in the first doctor's appointment, and they'd be pulling you back in a window by now. So they can't tell you all this. You got to learn this slowly.
No, it's terrible. And I think that was what was the hardest for me is like when she was diagnosed, I'm like, okay, so if she's like at this level, her blood sugar, like how many carbs should she have? There was no concrete answers for any of it. And I was like, what do you mean? And I turned to Kevin, like, this is what you've been doing? Like,
Well, and the thing was, it was not what I had been doing, because I've never like carb counted or had those formulas. And I would go into my appointments and they would ask me those questions. I'm like, I just have, at that time, I always had my pen with me, and I would look at the food I was going to eat, and I just gave myself what I knew would be fine, what would work. I'm not sitting there working a formula out. And so that was another
eye opener for you,
right? The
right?
struggle session at these appointments. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, now moving forward a couple of years into it, you've got to be watching what Megan's doing with Lily and thinking like, oh yeah, wow, that's crazy, right? To you.
Yeah. And since I've moved to the Omnipod, I've got my, formulas in the pod, but it's not, I got to look at it to tell you what it is.
You're old school. You're still like, you look at a plate and you go, that's 8 units. Like that kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I understand. Wow, that's a lot. It's interesting. You guys are like a little like podcast science experiments. Very nice, actually, for me. It's horrible for you, but it's really good for me in the podcast and people
Glad
listening.
we can help.
I think for us, what will be really like where we want to be is that the Libre working with the Omnipod 5, and then I think from there
you're back in.
And I know there's FDA issues and approvals, but having the ability to remote bolus with the Omnipod 5, I think is for us what we would really ideally want.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I could have used remote bolus yesterday. So, and my kid's 19.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah.
She's doing this thing where she's wearing her pod site obviously went wonky like 12 hours before it was going to shut off, like before she's going to run out of insulin. And by that, I just mean that her blood sugar was very stable at 120, but the algorithm just couldn't get her below 120. And for people listening at this moment, while I'm talking, Arden is wearing IAPS, a do-it-yourself algorithm.
Yep.
And so, it just couldn't move her. So I have access to like change her target. So I made her target lower, which made the insulin more aggressive, which was able to keep her at this 120. But, at some point, like I sent her a text and I was like, listen, this pump is over. And she goes, this pump's not coming off until it's out of insulin. I'm too busy. And I was like, okay, so she was willing to live with the 120 for 12 hours because she's like, I just don't have the time for this. And if she would have made a couple of like correction boluses, I think maybe she could have pushed it into the 90s. But it's just, I mean, she's in college and she's killing herself and she's like, look, something's got to give here. And this is what's going to be the thing today. Now, meanwhile, a 120 average blood sugar is like a 6.2 A1C. Like, I'm not sitting here worried about that.
Right.
But it's just interesting. Even I think it's interesting to say that even with the wonky numbers you were getting with the G6 or the G7 too, that you were still having a 7 A1C. And sleeping through the night is pretty amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah, we thought it was going to be way worse. We were honestly surprised because we went into that appointment thinking, all right, we're going to be at like 8 something.
Right.
I mean,
your whole problem was that it was reporting a lower number, so it wasn't being as aggressive with the insulin.
Right.
That's where you get the higher A1C from. Right.
Yep.
That sucks. I'm sorry. I'm not a soothsayer, but I bet you something changes with her, or they make. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like one day it just all works, or Omnipod 5 works with Libre, and you'll look back on this as like the horrible 6 months where this was the problem. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. It's important to keep that attitude too, because as this stuff changes and you got to keep morphing with it. Like Kevin knows now.
Yeah.
Like honestly, man, like 10 years ago, you should have been with all of us doing this stuff, but you weren't going to because you had diabetes for so long. You're like, this is fine. I'm doing fine. And now it's eye-opening, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I think you made a good point about kind of identifying sort of what are the big issues, big obstacles that kind of still remain today in the care of diabetes. And we talked about the kind of just still the sort of this old school approach that endocrinologists still have today. And I think there's also other kind of bigger things out there, thinking about Lily going into school next year and, us, as we've been talking to her, her kindergarten school that she will be going to, kind of seeing how, this is handled, in schools with nursing and those sorts of things. I mean, it's very much, caveman days in terms of how this is dealt with in schools. And so it's really important, I think, to have things like remote bolusing, and we're probably going to be looking at looping if there's not that option with Omnipod by the time she goes to school. So I think there's a lot of those sort of big issues out there that are still kind of holding people back. And I think there's also just accessibility to the devices as well. I think it's a big issue. The last couple of years, I think a lot of progress has been made on making insulin itself more affordable and available. But to me, that's only part of the equation. It's, you also got to have, good access to the technology. And I think that's also lacking now with, the way DMEs work and just the third party. And
does Loop not work with Libre 3?
We don't know. Maybe it does. We haven't started looking into Loop yet. We were kind of hoping that Omnipod is going to have a remote bolus option.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, listen, between you and me, that's my hope and goal too, is that just, one day, the retail algorithms are just a little more aggressive or customizable, or like, I don't know what the word you want to use exactly. I mean, and in the meantime, I have to say, I'm of both minds when I talk about this, because I'm talking about it from our perspective, but I'm always tempted to talk about it from other people's perspective, which is these systems are amazing. And you should not be on Omnipod 5, Control IQ, whatever the Medtronic thing is now, the 780, what is it? And if you're on those things, you're doing amazing. Yeah, maybe they're not going to keep your A1C in the 5s, but wow, how crazy is this technology? And, are you a person who's going to build their own algorithm, app and load it on their phone? If you're not that person, I wouldn't even think twice about it, but also, I mean, doing what I do, it's easier for me. It's easier for me to speak up, and I text a lovely man named Mike, and I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And Mike's like, I'll jump on a Zoom with you and show you because I like your podcast and thank you. And I have a different reality than other people do. I wouldn't do it either. To be perfectly honest with you. Trust me, when we got Omnipod 5, Arden was like, this is great. Perfect. No more Dr. Frankensteining an app on my phone. I was like, nope, nothing like that. And it was the one thing that stopped her was the carrying the PDM.
Yep.
She was like, I don't want to carry another device. I want to go back and do Loop. So that's what ended up happening. It's just that one thing. I don't want to carry this extra thing. And one day that'll be gone too, by the way. Yep. So,
Right. Yeah. And as parents, having the remote bolus option means that, we don't have to text the school nurse to say, hey, go give her,
it's a big deal. It's a big deal for reasons that people don't know too. You don't think of, which is, you have a drifting up blood sugar at school. Now you're involving the nurse. Now the nurse it probably doesn't make a more aggressive enough bolus. And this is now a whole day, and Lily's at school and her head's cloudy. And you know what I mean? It's a great idea. Also, I could make the other argument. What if somebody just bolused and you didn't know it, and now you're bolusing again? And there's, pros and cons to the idea. Exactly. Yeah. No kidding. Okay. What else? What else are we going to talk about?
Well, I think just to follow up on what you were just saying, that you're totally right that the technology is amazing. That's another kind of thing that we're thankful for with Lily. I mean, if you're going to be a diabetic, right now it's a great time, way better than 40 years ago when I was diagnosed. It's the best time you could choose to be a diabetic if you're going to have it, because of the technology that we have. So we are very thankful for that. No question about it.
Kevin, and you're just one of those people, man. You're one of those lucky people. You came through, I'm going to assume you did regular and MPH. You probably did beef. You probably did beef and pork too, right?
Beef and pork. You mean I remember when I was
the animal insulins.
Oh yeah. At that time, I think it was pork. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And so you've been through
insulin.
Dude, you've been through all of that and you're okay. You don't have any.
Yeah. And it was, and there were even the diet aspect of it. You had all these tables of exchanges and, this food for that food.
Yeah. You've heard Jenny talk about exchange, you used to do the exchange diet, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember that when I was a kid, and it was even to check your blood sugar, you had, it worked the way ketone tests work.
He peed on something.
You had that tube of strips.
Yeah.
And you checked your sugar and you had to compare the colors. And I'm like, does it, that was so imprecise.
Oh, please. Yeah, that was ridiculous. Yeah. Oh, well, Isaiah, you've been, but my point is that I've talked to plenty of people who live through this, and right now have a lot of complications. And I've talked to people who are just like, yeah, I have no problems. It's absolutely fascinating. And I've
never had any complications other than I think it was about 12 or 13 years ago. I had a very, very tiny spot of retinopathy in my left eye, and it was out of my field of vision, and it didn't require any treatment, and it just kind of went away. Other than that, I've never had any issues in terms of issues with feet or vision or anything like that. So I do think that there are some genetics can come into play. Some people just for whatever reason do better than others.
You were using enough insulin. It was dumb luck back then, really. You were just using enough insulin.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you described being aggressive about it, which was probably very helpful at the time.
Oh yeah.
Too.
It to the great frustration of my endocrinologists, they could not understand kind of what my system was, because it really wasn't a system other than I gave myself what I thought I needed at the time. And I didn't really hold back on it. And I was willing to deal with lows, that was it.
That's what we were talking about earlier, right? Just kind of charge ahead and see if it's okay.
Yep.
Okay. So we got these things covered. We're doing well. I like this. This is flowing along. You guys are great, by the way. I appreciate you doing a very good job of back and forth and not talking over top of each other. I appreciate this very much.
It's really hard for me to not talk over him.
Because he's so wrong.
He's just, he's from the South. And so sometimes I'm like, get to the point, But,
the podcast taught me how to do that. I was bad at it in the beginning. In the beginning, I would talk over people. And then eventually I just sat here like willing myself not to speak.
Right.
Megan, let me ask you a question. When you realize that you know what he's going to say, but he hasn't finished saying it yet, that's frustrating, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. If we were here in our living room, I would say it for him and walk out of the room. Yes.
Kevin, that's a Northeast thing, man. We're we already know what you're going to say. Let's go.
Yep.
Got it. Yeah.
100%. Yep.
We got to make more money and buy a bigger house. Just hurry up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Megan, how great is it not to have to drive over that bridge anymore? Be honest. It's the worst.
I would never go back. It's a great, we live in a great place here in the South, but those long-winded Southerners, man.
It's not just the talking. It's just from her perspective, everything is just slow here. Right.
Yeah. So Kelly and I went to lunch in Savannah. We were visiting Arden at school. I think it's out of the bag that Arden's not in Connecticut. Right. And so, we're in Savannah and we leave the hotel and Arden's got a class. So Kelly and I are like, we're going to go get lunch. Then we're going to get Arden later, like this whole thing. So we go to this little place and we sit down. And let me just say, 2 fucking hours later, I walked out of there. I'm like, I don't know what just happened. I had fries and a half a burger.
Oh my God.
Why were we in there? And all I could do while I was sitting there is think, what? Do none of these people have anywhere to be?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's no pressure on their face. I'm looking around like, where's the wait?
Nobody want to make money here?
Oh my God. I got money I want to give you. Yeah. Like there's people waiting outside. Go take their money too. I'm like, nobody thinks about it like that.
No, it's different.
So, so Arden said recently, she goes, this is a lovely place. This is how we knew, by the way, this conversation was going to go sideways, because she started off saying something very positive. She goes, this is a lovely place. I can't wait to get out of here.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, great. She goes, I can't live here. And she's like, what? She goes, it's so slow.
Oh, wow.
Like, I need people to want to be somewhere while they're driving. I need them to have some urgency. Like she's like, the grocery store, she goes, Dad, I'm going to murder somebody in that grocery store. And I was
in the South, wait till she gets stuck behind someone in the line that still writes out the checks.
I'm sure.
Grocery store.
That's when
happens here.
She'll be on the news then at some point.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Young diabetic girl beats old woman in grocery store for writing check. I mean, she's really like, just like, my God, she's like, it's so slow. I can't handle it. And by the way, conversely, my son's in Atlanta and he's like, I got to get out of here. I hate this. I hate being in a city.
Yeah. I'm like, where we live, it's changed a lot over the years because our specific area, I'd say most of the population at this point is actually Northeasterners now, particularly from New York and areas like that. So I think that it is changing, but sort of.
Kevin, we gave ourselves Anjana making a pile of money. We're going to come buy your houses now. That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. Yeah.
Don't worry.
Funny.
Yeah, we're on it.
Yeah.
My gosh. I want to make sure, is there anything we didn't talk about that we should have?
No, I mean, I think we pretty much covered, I think, everything that we wanted to talk about. One thing I think is pretty crazy, in Kevin's family, there was no type 1 before he was diagnosed that they know of. I mean, I ask every time his mother is here. I'm like, are you sure? Like, are you positive there's nothing? Kevin,
we did leave out. Yeah, we did leave that out, right?
Yeah. Kevin's an identical twin, and his identical twin brother is not a type 1.
What about? Well, that makes sense to me. But what about other autoimmune stuff, Kevin?
Well, so the other thing about my brother, he has a 17-year-old son that also has type 1. Oh. So I have a nephew that has type 1. So
he's a carrier.
Yeah, clearly.
I think that's a not a very scientific way of saying that. Well, what about other stuff in the family? I'll go through it with you. Celiac in your extended family. Thyroid.
Nope. Yeah. My mother, she had her thyroid taken out. She had like whatever it's called, that condition where your thyroid swells up.
She had a goiter, right?
Goiter, so she had it removed.
Rheumatoid arthritis?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
How about bipolar disorder?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, although everyone goes,
who knows?
Yeah, dude. Everyone goes, I don't know. I got an aunt, man. I'm not sure. So heavy hay fever through the families. How about vitiligo? Like any other autoimmune stuff?
Our son, our 7-year-old, he does have peanut allergy and just allergies in general. So
like allergic stuff. I got you. Hey, I asked a question very early on. I didn't get the answer to it, and it doesn't matter anymore, but I still wonder it. So I'm just going to ask again. How long have you guys been married?
Let's see. We had our 10-year. We were married in 2000.
We got married in 2011. I think we've been married for 12 years.
I like that you guys don't know how long you've been married. That's fantastic.
We have 3 children and run a business
and diabetes. I don't know what day it is, right? I had somebody.
What day it is? We got diabetes times 2 in this house. It's a busy place.
This guy pops up in my Facebook group the other day and he goes, "As you know," and I'm like, "Whoa, stop yourself! I don't know anything." I know
nothing. Yeah. I remember nothing. You could have told me yesterday. I am already
running a thing larger than you can imagine, and I don't know. My wife says things to me. I go to the grocery store, get to the grocery store and text my wife and go, "Why am I here?"
Right. Well, Kevin does too, and he's not running this huge podcast.
Oh, okay.
So.
I do. Yeah, the grocery store trips are not the best. There's always like 2 or 3 kind of unicorn items that are on that list. And I'm having to call her like, where the hell do I find this? Where is this?
Yeah, that could be a boy thing. Maybe that's not this part of it for me. Exactly.
Yeah.
But
that's right.
I leave my house going iced tea, bread. Like I say it over and over, but I just learned about 3 years ago. I just tell my wife now. I'm like, you want it, you text it to me. You don't text it to me, you're not getting it. Like that's the best I can hope for anymore. But I'm fascinated. Like 42,000 people in that group, and the guy starts talking to me like I sleep next to him, and I'm like, man, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, sure you do, and I'm like, boom, nope, you remember it. Everyone should be in my position for a day. And then they wouldn't say stuff like that to people anymore. They go, "Oh, you obviously don't know who the hell I am," would be the answer. Because I've talked to 65 people since you, and I don't know any of their names. I can't see their faces. It's virtual. It's hard to keep track of, So anyway, you guys were really great. I appreciate you doing this very much.
Yeah, we were happy. We're really excited. Your podcast has been awesome for us. We love listening, and it's helped me a ton. I mean, a ton. Yeah, I've learned a lot. I think I brought Kevin onto it pretty early, and I was like, "You gotta listen to this guy." For
me, when I listened to it, was they're talking about things that I had already been doing for many years, and it was nice to know that they're there was this other path out there that, people have discovered, in terms of just being, like you say, being bold with insulin.
I've heard that.
It was,
yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I've heard that from people. They're like, I didn't know anyone else did it like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really cool.
Scott, do you know if there are endocrinologists out there that actually recommend people listen to your podcast?
Oh, yeah. That happens a lot.
Yeah. I wish more would. That would, yeah.
We're trying. I have an intake form. So when you come into the private Facebook group, it asks you like 4 quick questions. And one of them is, where did you hear about this? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say around 40% of people say from their doctors.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's either from other support places, from my doctor. On Reddit is a big one, which is fascinating. I've never been on Reddit before in my life, but apparently thank you to the people of Reddit. They seem to like the podcast. Or from a friend. Like that's it. I've had so many. So, it's funny. This is the time of year where I have to go back to the advertisers, and I'm like, are we doing this again next year? Like, and they're like, yeah. And, we kind of do that whole thing, the businessy part of it. I find myself saying to people lately, this is crazy because this is the 9th year of the podcast. But when you really look at it, the first 4 years were bullshit. Like, in the grand scheme of things. Like, don't get me wrong. In the first 4 years, this was the biggest diabetes podcast that existed. It was at some points the only one that existed. There's been like, I think the numbers now in the mid 80s, people who have launched a type 1 podcast that have failed since I've started mine in like the last 9 years. There's a handful of them that are left, but as near as I can tell by looking at charts, they don't chart on any Apple chart whatsoever. I'm sure they're helping people and reaching people, but not on enough of a scale that it reads out. And I'm not saying anything bad about them. I'm just saying like that's the situation. And still, as I look at the numbers, I think I realize this is in its infancy still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those first 4 years, it took me 4 years to get 3 or 4 years to get to 1 million downloads, like total downloads. And I was like, oh my God, I have 1 million downloads. And now 4 years later, I have 15 million.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
And so I really think, this year should do 6 million. Last year did like 4.5. Even if it doesn't grow anymore, if it stayed at 6 million a year, that would be insane. Those are indicators to me of growth. And here are some other indicators of growth for me. I was usually I say you won't know what this means, but Megan will. I went to Wawa the other day, Megan. And,
I know the Wawa.
And we were around the house. If I'm being honest, the Phillies game was getting ready to start. And my wife said, can you run out and get me iced tea real quick? And I was like, if I can get back here before the Phillies game starts, I'm happy to do this. So I left. I run into Wawa, which is a convenience store for the rest of you. And I go to the cooler. I grab the gallon jug and I'm walking to the register and I turn a corner. And there's this like little girl standing in front of me. Like we kind of turned corners and we didn't walk into each other, but we kind of came face to face. And she was only like, I don't know, 9, you know what I mean? She's little. And she's in her little soccer uniform and her mom's standing behind her. And I just smiled at her because I felt like I might have startled her turning the corner. And I looked at the mom, I continued to smile and I kept going. And I have to admit, if I think back, the mom glanced down at my shirt and I go get in line. I'm doing self-checkout. Megan knows I'm flying out of there. I'm proud at how fast I'm getting out of there. You know what I mean? I'm like, I can't wait to keep moving and go drive fast and turn my music up and do all our northeasty things. Yeah. And I'm going to definitely break a speed limit on the way home. It's going to be fantastic. I look up and the lady and her kid are standing behind me and she goes, Juicebox?
Oh, cool.
And I go,
that's awesome.
So I tried to be funny, which didn't go over well because I think I didn't realize how like excited she was. And I just, I put my hand up at my waist and I went, not in public. And I thought I was being like obviously funny. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm like, oh, no, wait, I was fucking kidding. I was like, no, it's okay. It's okay. I'm like, I'm Scott. Give me a second. Like, I'll finish up. And so we're chatting and stuff. That's insane. Yeah. It's in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
In an Ulta, at a gas station, in a Wawa.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just starting.
Yeah.
So
it is interesting, Scott. I mean, I think clearly to me, this podcast is moving the needle. I would be interested to see, like, just on a health basis, like maybe you've done this already, do a survey of your subscribers. What's your average glucose? What's your average A1C? It would be interesting to compare that to, like general population data that's out there and see how different they are. I think that would be very, very intriguing to look at. I bet you it would be, much better than the Gen Pop that's out there.
I did a survey last year of 1,100 listeners.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Oh. And it's not like, I don't think a hospital would say that I did it correctly, but we asked as many questions as we could think to ask. And I had a grad student from Johns Hopkins go over it, like a person who knew what they were doing.
Oh, excellent.
And I would say that who provides a satisfactory range of diabetes topics is one of the questions, right? Addresses many of your unanswered questions. And given the choice between medical professionals, the podcast / the Facebook group, and other online printed materials, out of an average of 6, medical professionals got 2.9, online materials 2.5, and the podcast was 5.6.
Yeah.
Out of 6. Yeah. It just, and now these are, someone would point out, well, yeah, those are the people who are listening to the podcast. I would point out, well, if more people listen to the podcast, then more people would answer that way.
Right.
So it's there. It's everything. It's the things you need to know in a conversational way. It's learning without knowing you're learning. It's hearing something that makes you go, oh, I didn't think of that. Those are the things that can't happen in a doctor's office. The things that can happen in a doctor's office don't happen in a doctor's office. So these other things they're never going to find a way to do that.
Right, exactly. Just the concept of looping, Scott, we would have never known that you could do a DIY loop system, but for this podcast. Endocrinologists, I'm not aware of any that suggest looping or would even mention it. And that's an actual option that we need to look at for Lily going into school next year. We're probably going to need it if Omnipod isn't able to, get a remote bolus option going and get it approved. So that's a great example right there. Yeah.
The scope is the important part, right? So to take you back years ago, I knew my blog helped people. And when I started a podcast, I saw that the podcast helped people at a greater rate. Mm-hmm. And then I saw as it got more people got back, as I reached more people. And then I realized that scaling was incredibly important if you're going to continue to reach people. And so I have enough of like a small business owner's mindset and aggressively, I like to win. I don't know how another way to put that exactly. And so like you put those things together along with the information. And I was like, if I reach more people will be helped. And I kind of just obsessively do that over and over again. And so what the podcast has done is it has a massive reach that nothing else in the diabetes space touches. Like people try, companies try, they've all given up. They can't do it. Like, look at what the companies do for marketing now. They just do influencer stuff.
Yeah.
Right. They can't create their own content and draw people in. They know it. And I don't just mean one company, all of them. So they go to influencers. And by the way, those influencers burn out so quickly. They're shooting stars. Like for 6 months, you're like, oh, I love this girl on Instagram. And then where is she now? You don't know. It's over. You know what I mean? So building size and scope and then sustainability was my next step. Like I was like, it has to be as valuable today as it was 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. That I figured out. Like, I'll use an example. I just pulled it up in front of you. You want really great information about Loop? Loop and Learn has a YouTube channel. The information on there is really great, but their best video has, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 views.
Wow.
And that's not a reflection on them because, again, fantastic information. It's a reflection on how people want their information given to them.
Yep.
I heard somebody say, I don't know if I was watching a TV show or where I heard somebody say recently, you can blame people and you can blame America or companies all you want, because McDonald's sells French fries to people. But I guarantee you, if McDonald's sold kale salads, they'd be out of business. And like at some point you have to say, this is what people want. This is how they want it. And what I did was I took diabetes information and put it inside of a format about how people like to be entertained and just mix them together. And that's a thing that still no one will do. Like they want to be very like uptight and buttoned up if they're going to talk about diabetes. And I maintain over and over again, if that's what you're going to do, no one's going to listen. It's fucking boring. And I don't, it doesn't matter that it's going to save your life. That's not how people's brains work. again, they'd eat a kale salad if that's how everybody's brains work. It's not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just said, why am I fighting the nature of people? I'm going to make a podcast that I think is entertaining. And instead of talking about movies or whatever else, the hell else people talk about in podcasts, I'm going to talk to people who have diabetes, and then this stuff will come out organically. And there you go. It's not a big secret. Anyone could rip me off. Go ahead and try. Nobody will do it. So yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Anyway, I'm glad you guys found me. Thank you.
It's helped. It has helped us. Yeah. I mean,
it has helped us. Anytime there's something wrong or we run into issue, I go straight to your Facebook group and I search it because chances are it's in there or someone has done it, someone has said it, and I'll search it. And I am so anti-Facebook because I feel like it's doomsday and everyone puts the worst up there. And, in the beginning, I promised I wouldn't go on all these groups, but the Juicebox Facebook group it's been great. I think it's a great community. I am sure for you have one or two people on there who aren't always so great.
Some people
for the
are
most
pricks,
part.
but for the most part, not many. And you just make those people go away. And that first of all, I try. Right. If they don't want to play ball, and by play ball, I mean be nice to people, then they're gone.
Yeah.
And, and I did the same thing with the Facebook group that I did with the podcast. I was like, how do people like to talk to each other? Like, why do we just accept that this is what it means if you're on Facebook? Everybody's going to be and short and all that stuff. Like, that doesn't have to be that way. So I set a standard and I was like, this is how we're going to treat each other. Listen, last night, there's this guy in the Facebook group. He's given me trouble a couple of times. He gets upset when people, I don't know, he gets upset sometimes. And when he tries to make his point, he's a little militaristic about it. And it makes people upset that see it. So I one time said to him, hey, look, you can't talk like that to people. Like, chill out. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then a month later, he did it again. And I'm like, so I suspended his account. And then I sit down at my computer last night and I've got a message from the guy. I'm like, listen, we're not 15. Don't message me about your problems. I was like, be nice, stay in the group, or leave. I don't give a shit. Like it's, that's it. And I don't know what he'll do. And honestly, I don't care. At some point, it's the bigger picture. You're helping 42,000 people. If 3 people want to be idiots, they got to go. Like that's, that's what it is. And
also everyone's individual situations with diabetes are going to be different.
Yeah.
We talked about my situation and just for various reasons that there are things that you can control, but I do believe there are variables that body composition and chemistry and those sorts of things that are also going to affect it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always a one size fits all.
No,
in terms
but
of
there's enough core information that is standard from person to person that if you have that bit, then you can figure out the rest later. But if you start with the assumption that this is all just chaos, then you're never going to figure anything out because you chase ghosts all over the place when you see things happen.
Right.
Yeah. Listen, I don't want to say I got it figured out, but I figured it out. And so and now it's just a matter of just having these conversations over and over again and letting people listen into them and
other people.
help other people.
I think what Megan just said too about just kind of there are sort of places where you can go, there's other corners of Facebook and Instagram, that might have diabetes information, but with social media, I think one of the trappings can be kind of, falling into kind of a victim mentality with it. I would say, again, this is where I go back to kind of being blessed that I was diagnosed back in the early 80s when this stuff didn't exist. But, at no point, I've never had a time where I've sat and thought, why me and why do I have this? And it's the worst thing in the world. Because honestly, there's a lot of other crap out there that's way worse than this.
You must like listening to Arden when she talks about diabetes because she's just like, she said something the last time she was on that really resonated with people.
Yeah.
I said, hey, we're sending you off to college on IEAPS. We've only been using it for like 10 days. We don't really know what we're doing. And she goes, it's just turning some buttons and knobs. I'll be fine. And then I was like, okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And that helps me because I am like the why me, why my kid, why is this happening? And when Arden comes on, it's so awesome to hear because it could be Lily in 15 years. Like, whatever. It's fine. It's just part of who I am.
It would help you to know, I think, that she got into her car at 11 a.m. one day and drove 700 miles by herself to Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
With
Crazy.
what we learned later was COVID symptoms.
Oh, wow.
Really?
She basically kicked COVID driving south, like shivers and shakes to hot, like that whole thing. And her blood sugar. She got there and like absolutely fine.
Awesome.
That's nuts.
And the people that I saw respond back to that little statement of like, oh, it's just some knobs. Like, I'll figure it out. Like buttons I'll push and it'll be fine. People were like, oh my God, like, why am I so worried if this freaking kid is just like, yeah,
Is
whatever.
doing this.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And I pray that Lily is like that one day. And I, try to be positive for her and not let her see any of my anxiety surrounding it because that's how I want her to be.
Yeah,
It's no big deal.
It does help her to see me with my Omnipod on and my G6, and we
I would think.
We kind of talked to her about that, and just like daddy's, no big deal, that sort of thing, and that does help her. I mean, there's been a few times where she's sort of asked, how, I don't know what words she used, Megan, but to the effect of, what
do I have to wear this forever?
Do I have to wear this forever?
Yeah.
But she sort of moves on quickly and just doesn't really.
Yeah, she's just a kid. Just go. Yeah, you have to wear it forever, and she'll go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was like, she asked that actually the other day. Do I have to wear this thing forever? And I was like, oh, Lily, don't think about that right now.
It's going to be fine. Well, Kevin, I'll tell you what, Lily having diabetes is going to help you, and you don't even know it yet in ways.
Oh, yeah. Scott, I did not have, I never moved to Omnipod until she did. Yeah. I was always against having a device on me because when I was back I played a lot of sports and just thought it would be an impediment and realized that it wasn't once she started, and it has helped me greatly. Just that one thing.
It is not unlike most other things in the world that you are scared of before you do them. Then after you do them, you're like, oh, this was fine. So
yes. Right.
I agree. Yeah. I really do. All right. Well, you guys are terrific. I appreciate the conversation very much.
Yeah.
Hold on for 1 second for me. I'm going to say goodbye privately and then we're done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks,
that was
Scott.
my pleasure. Let's get rid of that FOMO. There should be no fear of missing out on Omnipod because you have the opportunity right now to use my link at omnipod.com/juicebox to learn more about Omnipod 5 or to get started right now. omnipod.com/juicebox. Please use my link. There's links in the show notes and links at Juicebox Podcast, the Omnipod, Eversense, and all of the sponsors. I want to thank the Eversense CGM for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Learn more about its implantable sensor, smart transmitter, and terrific mobile application at eversensecgm.com/juicebox. Get the only implantable sensor for long-term wear. Get Eversense. If you're living with type 1 diabetes, the After Dark collection from the Juicebox Podcast is the only place to hear the stories that no one else talks about. From drugs to depression, self-harm, trauma, addiction, and so much more. Go to juiceboxpodcast.com, up in the menu, and click on After Dark. There you'll see a full list of all of the After Dark episodes. I know that Facebook has a bad reputation, but please give the private Facebook group for the Juicebox Podcast a healthy once-over. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. The group now has 47,000 members in it. It gets 150 new members a day. It is completely free, and at the very least, you can watch other people talk about diabetes. And everybody is welcome. Type 1, Type 2, gestational, loved ones, everyone is welcome. Go up into the featured tab of the private Facebook group, and there you'll see lists upon lists of all of the management series that are available to you for free in the Juicebox Podcast. Becoming a member of that group, I really think it will help you. It will at least give you community. You'll be able to kind of lurk around, see what people are talking about, pick up some tips and tricks. Maybe you can ask a question or offer some help. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.